in the Center for Healthcare Delivery Science. But today I'm in the role of a research education lead for the ASCEL Professional Development Corps. And today, as part of the Flight School series, we're going to be talking about individual development and mentorship plans, which are part of the ASCEL pilot program and some of the ASCEL other awards and mechanisms. And Erin Regal is also here today. I'm sure most of you know her. What we want to do is just share a little bit about what's required, the different components of these two different plans, and then tell you a bit about how these aspects of the pilot application are reviewed so that you have some tips and tricks for how to put these things together. Okay, so just as kind of first a reminder, the pilot grant program for 2024 has as its mission to first accelerate clinical and translational research that addresses health outcomes of Delawareans, and then secondly, to facilitate the growth or expansion of the PI's work toward an impactful and independent line of research that will be competitive for external support from the NIH. Now, because of that second component there, it's really important that pilot grant applications that are put forward by folks who have less experience kind of in that trajectory of moving towards an independent research program have a plan to improve their professional development and also a plan to get the kind of mentorship and support that they need to move in the direction of that independent research program. So as part of the instructions for the pilot grants is this statement that pilot proposals led by investigators who have not previously been the PI of a funded NIH K or R series grant must identify a research mentor and develop and submit a detailed individual development plan or IDP, and that's written by the principal investigator, and also a mentoring plan written by the mentor, of course, in collaboration with the investigator as part of the full application. And we're going to focus today a bit on that IDP and the mentoring plan. One other component of the instructions that I just wanted to alert you all to is this second statement here on this slide, that all pilot awards must outline a plan for outreach, involvement, and or dissemination of their research findings to a relative community. I threw that in there because within your individual development plan or your mentoring plan, you might want to build in aspects of this requirement as well. So if you haven't done a lot of outreach, involvement, or dissemination of your research findings to a community, you might want to build that into your individual development plan. You might also want to seek mentoring in that aspects of this pilot grant proposal. Okay, so first let's talk about the individual development plan. For the individual development plan that's part of the pilot application, there is a template provided within the ASCEL dashboard. And when you get into that dashboard to submit the various parts of your application, you'll see a template for the IDP, and there are 6 components that template is going to walk you through. So first, you need to identify your mentors, put in some information about them, and then it's going to walk you through developing specific goals. So first, it's going to ask you for your overarching goal or your 5-year plan. Then it's going to ask you specifically to create 1 or more goals in each of the following areas: clinical work, teaching, research, and leadership. And the goals that you put in those 4 sections should be more limited of scope. So maybe 1-year goals with immediate plans. And all of those more immediate specific goals should lead towards your overarching goal. Now, some folks, when they're creating this IDP, they think about, in general, where do they want their career to go? And that's what they put in the overarching goal. And then they also think about their clinical teaching, research, and leadership goals, also in very general terms. What I recommend, based on the reviews we've seen in prior years, is that all of those goals that you create in the clinical teaching, research, and leadership areas really need to fit together to create kind of a cohesive plan. And they should really link back to the specific research proposal you're putting together for this pilot grant. So you want to make sure to connect the dots for the reviewers. Make sure that, again, your clinical goals, teaching, research, and leadership goals all fit together and they're relevant to the current proposal. Some examples. So in the past, when we've seen people propose a research study, within their teaching goals, they may talk about teaching research staff specifically around the topic area of the research proposal, so that they have the kind of background they need to be more effective in their roles on this particular study. Okay. That's just one example. Also, you want to make sure that all of these goals move you towards this impactful independent line of research that eventually will be competitive for external support for NIH funding. So all of those pieces just need to fit together. They need to work together. They need to be relevant to your current grant proposal. So we got a question, and feel free to ask questions as we go along. So Mary, do you want to unmute and just go ahead and say your question?
Yeah. So I am a research professor here at University of Delaware. While my work is very public health focused, it's very much community based and also data based. And so I'm not in a clinical setting. What happens if you're not in one of those goal areas? And would a clinical setting then be, for, in my instance, maybe be then within the community setting? Or, you know, how do you navigate that if you're not in clinics, or you don't teach, or you're not a leader? No, I'm joking. Everyone's a leader, but yeah.
So that's a good question. So you don't need to have goals in all of these areas if it really doesn't fit for you. And I think clinical is the one where it's not as easy to fit a goal in there if you're not actively involved in clinical work. Because as you said, everybody's a leader, so you could probably find a leadership goal that would be relevant to your overarching goal. And teaching could be teaching in a course. It could also be like the example I gave, teaching research coordinators or teaching students who would be part of the project. So there are ways in which you can come up with some teaching aspects as well. I don't think that you would be dinged if you put in some kind of community-based goals into the clinical part. But I think that the community goals, especially if you're partnering around the research, is probably most relevant in the research goal section. Does that make sense?
And if I could chime in just to add on to what Melissa is saying, it says clinical goals, but don't necessarily think of it as a goal that occurs in a clinical setting. So it could be, for some of our folks, having a better understanding of the disease state. So maybe you're going to attend a conference to have a better understanding of the disease that you're studying or working with. Or, you know, it could be something as simple as you want to establish a partnership with somebody in the clinical setting. So it's not necessarily you have to be a physician, you have to be a nurse, you have to be in the clinical setting to have that goal. Think of your project kind of in a big sense of how that may fit. But again, as Melissa said, you do have the option to select. You don't have any goals. There is the option to select 0. And that's not, don't think of that as it has to be a dig because you don't have one. So just keep that in mind.
Thanks, Erin.
Diana?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. Yeah, I had I guess kind of like similar question, but it's actually like the opposite. Like, for example, I'm a pathologist. I'm a pediatric pathologist. All of my clinical work is obviously pathology related. My project is, well, I think everything is related to pathology, but it's not exactly a, like pathology, like specifically related work. So, but truthfully, I spent the majority of my clinical time in pathology. So I'm thinking, what should I do there?
Could you say a little bit about what the research project is that you're proposing?
So the research project that I'm proposing, I'm actually looking at the correlation between acute lymphoblastic leukemia at a presentation and also in 5 years' time, and the ADI, the Area Deprivation Index. And we may add another portion, which would be, more molecular biology. But again, none of that. And that is because, and we're using biobank samples, which is, I'm the director of the biobank. So that's kind of the hat that I'm using for this. But let's be honest, I spend 80% of my time doing, pathology because it's my clinical load. So I'm just trying to think, what should I kind of do there? What are your recommendations?
Yeah.
And if it takes too much of your time, we can talk offline, whatever. But I'm just thinking because I'm trying to put it together, and I've been thinking about this for a while.
Yeah, and if you want to talk more offline, we can. I think it's fine to talk about kind of your general clinical goals, but you do want to carve out one goal that links back to this research.
Okay.
And kind of coming up with that is hard for me on the spot too. But it's something that yeah, you can think about with your mentors as well, kind of like what clinical aspects of this project particularly are things that you want to learn more about or do something about.
I mean, I thought that like your idea of like, going to like a conference, I was like, I think that's a great idea. I would like to learn more about leukemia in general and all of that. So I think that I will definitely add that.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, I'm such a pathologist. Again, many of the things that I do, it's not like I don't see leukemia in pathology, but not exactly related to that. But that's a good idea. I'll keep thinking about it, and maybe we'll talk offline.
Yeah. And you could also say how accomplishing the research proposed in this would influence your clinical role. Moving forwards, that could also be a clinical goal.
Well, and I think now that I'm thinking about it, one of my clinical goals could be to get more samples into the biobank. And for that, we have to, partner with the pathology and with the clinician. So I think that, like, just as I thought about it, I think that that could be a good one.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
Other questions at this point before we move on?
So I have a question, like, because the CDR is like, 1 year proposal actually. So is it like, 1 year or like, 5-year plan?
So the overarching goal that you propose should be a 5-year plan, but the goals that you list under the clinical teaching, research, and leadership areas should be just 1-year goals. So those should fit in within the year time frame of the pilot grant.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So also when you're writing your IDP and you're writing these goals, we really encourage you to write them as SMART goals. And I know you probably have all heard this SMART acronym before, but make sure that the goals you're writing are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And the reviewers really want to see detail here. So what do you want to accomplish specifically? What evidence will you use to gauge that progress? So is that progress something that is measurable? Is the goal reasonable, but clearly pushing you forward and really kind of pushing you towards that independence that we want to see in the future? Is the goal relevant? So is it aligned with that long-term 5-year objective? And also, is it relevant to the current work that you're proposing? And then is it time-based? So are you providing a detailed deadline in the goal? So here's just an example of a type of SMART goal that one might write. So in the next 4 months, so that you have the time, I will submit for publication 1 first author manuscript reporting on my pilot data. Okay, so that's specific. It's measurable because it's 1. You're going to put 1 in. And then how is it relevant? That will help bolster my publication record and better position me for future external funding. Okay, so that has all of those components. And then you can get even more specific. And generally, when you get more specific with these SMART goals, they're more helpful to you. So for example, I will consult with my mentor in our next meeting to decide upon a journal and who to invite as co-authors. I will provide my mentor with a draft of the introduction by, and you can put in a date. That level of detail is often helpful for the reviewers to look at and say, okay, yeah, they have a clear plan. They know the next steps that they need to take. They can also evaluate, okay, is this an area where the candidate needs to develop skills? So do they need more first author publications? Do they need to get their pilot data out in order to move them forward? And then also they can think, is this going to move you towards your overall objective and also help in your current research? Okay, so that's what you want to do. These should not be really vague goals where it's difficult to discern how is this really going to link to your overall goal? How is it going to push your research forward? How is it going to really help you develop as an investigator? Questions there?
This is Erin again, and I'll just chime in. I think I've been doing the review panels and sessions between MRDAs and Excel pilots for at least 10 years now. And the feedback and critique that comes from reviewers is often mitigated by using these SMART goals. So, comments I frequently hear are, the goal is not reasonable in the time frame of the project. So, for example, using Diana's goal, you wouldn't want to say you're going to get 100 patient samples in a week. That's not a reasonable goal, and reviewers will pick that up very, very quickly, and they'll hold on to that. If it's not, the timeline's not clear, that's also something that they pick up on. So if you follow the model of these SMART goals, you will, it will really help the IDP and the review of the IDP. And I know Melissa's going to show you what the reviewers are actually looking at, but just keep this in mind as you are writing the goals. It's really, really important. So, and again, like for Diana's other goal about the conference, you wouldn't just say, I'm going to go to a conference about leukemia. Follow the SMART model, and then it's really going to make the reviewer say, aha, I see what her overall goal is for the pilot project and how attending this conference will help her. As Rob always says, sometimes the reviewers are tired, they're cranky. This is the 10th thing they have to do after their day's already done. They're doing it after putting kids to bed. So you just want to make these goals as clear and as easy for them to read and understand and gain that picture of what your goals are for your overall project. And again, the SMART model will really help with that. That's just my little preachy comment there for a minute.
Okay. So when the reviewers do get your IDP and look through it, there are just a few criteria that they're rating. First, they're evaluating, is this plan clear? Okay. And if you've kind of followed what we've said so far, your plan should be clear. What is your 5-year goal? What are your 1-year goals in these different areas? How are they going to contribute to that 5-year plan? How does all of this fit together? How is the proposed research going to bring you in to accomplishing this long-term goal? Do you have you set aside sufficient time to accomplish those goals? Remember, these pilot projects do not have a lot of time associated with them, and you need to do the research. So, do you have sufficient time within the next year to accomplish the goals that you set out? Next, and this kind of gets a little bit into the mentorship plan, but as part of the IDP, you specify who your mentor is. Is the mentor that you've chosen, and maybe a mentorship team, suitable to help you achieve the goals that you set out? Okay, so this is something that goes a little bit beyond the IDP, and we'll talk about it a bit as we move into the mentorship plan. But it's important to have a mentor that has the types of expertise and experiences necessary to help you accomplish your goals. And oftentimes that's not all embodied in one person. So you may want to have multiple mentors, or, as I said, a mentorship team with people with different types of skills and experiences to make sure that they can help you as a team accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. Another thing that the reviewers evaluate is, how likely is this plan to lead to success in getting external funding long term? So when you are doing this IDP process, you really need to think through, okay, how has what is my record to date? What does my biosketch look like? What does my publication record look like? What sorts of training do I still need? What sorts of skills do I still need to develop? And you need to be kind of critical about where you are now and think, what do I need training in, education in, experience in? What do I need to learn to get me to a point where the NIH is going to look at my biosketch and say, okay, this person has what they need to do this research that they're proposing. And then lastly, there's an overall IDP score that they give you. So each of these gets a separate score. And that is kind of part of the score you get for the training plan. Any questions there? Erin, do you have any comments?
No, it just, again, this is what the reviewers are filling out on the template when they look at your review. So again, if you objectively look at what you've completed in your IDP, if you follow these along, if you've done the SMART goals, I think you have all the ability to put yourself in a really good position for the reviewers to see your IDP as strong. So again, just follow these tips and tricks and you'll be good.
Okay, before we move on to the mentoring plan, any last questions on the IDP?
I guess one thing we should add and make clear for folks is that the IDP is not something you should be doing just on your own. It's meant to be done in conjunction with your mentor. So maybe you go through the IDP and complete it yourself, but you should have that conversation with your mentor and ask for their feedback on it. So it's not something you should just be working on and hitting submit. So just keep that in mind as you go forward.
I have a question about the IDP, just in terms of writing the timeline for the goals, because I'm looking at the ones that I've written so far, and I feel like I've been writing some for the fall, but this funding wouldn't start until January, correct? So we want to write this with dates starting in January or beyond.
Yes.
Okay.
Aaron, would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say it doesn't hurt you to put those goals in, but just you may use those as lead into events or times or things that happen as the project starts. So maybe this is in preparation for getting the project and how it starts. So you just want to make sure that it's clear. It's not just you're going to hit this goal before you get the pilot. It's done. You don't have to worry about it. Does that make sense to you? Kind of like a bridge to what happens when you actually get the pilot.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay, on to the mentorship plan. So just like with the IDP, there's a template provided with within the SL dashboard for the mentorship plan. And there are 5 questions for this plan. They're not necessarily in this order, but they include, and these are questions for the mentor. How long have you served as a research mentor? Please provide the context for the current relationship with the mentee. How do you envision the proposed project fostering the mentee's expertise in clinical and translational research? How did you help the mentee prepare the current proposal? And then an additional information section. Okay, so these should be things, again, like Aaron said, you should work on the answers to these questions with your mentor. And really, the mentor should be involved in your proposal. So they should be reading drafts of it. They should be providing feedback. They should be kind of helping with the design of the study, all of those sorts of things. And that should all be made clear in the mentorship plan. So what have they done so far? Also, what should be clear is how their role is going to play out moving forward. And I'm going to kind of move from this section pretty quickly into the review criteria, because I do feel like the review criteria give you a lot of tips for what to put into these sections that maybe the questions in the dashboard template might not cue you in to doing. So in addition to the mentorship plan, there is also going to be a mentor bio sketch, and actually there will be bio sketches from each of your mentors. And there's a personal section on the bio sketches. There are also letters that need to come from your mentors. All of these 3 pieces, the mentorship plan, that personal statement on your mentor's bio sketches, and the mentor letters, should be consistent. In fact, it's okay if they say exactly the same thing in like, even if the sentences are exactly the same, that's okay. As Aaron pointed out, these reviewers are busy, they may be distracted. Telling them the same thing in 3 different places may actually be helpful for them. And the mentorship plan, the bio sketch section, and the mentoring letter should directly address the review criteria. So here are the review criteria. The reviewers are evaluating the mentor in many ways. So first, they need to address, is this mentor adequately experienced in research mentoring to provide decent mentorship? So they like to see mentors with experience, and maybe even saying something in their bio sketch and in the template I have been mentoring junior faculty, postdoctoral fellows, and graduate students for the last 15 years in the areas of this methodology, these topic areas, yada, yada. Okay, so they want some kind of evidence across these 3 documents where the reviewer has confidence that the mentor is adequately experienced to be a good mentor. Then they consider, well, is this mentor and possibly the mentorship team suitable for this particular research project? Okay, so do they know about the topic area? Do they know about the methodology? Are they involved in clinical work that's relevant to this research proposal? All those sorts of things. And again, that might not all happen in one person. So you may have a primary mentor who's an expert in the topic area and a secondary mentor who's an expert in the specific methodology or research design that you've chosen to use, and that's fine. Then the reviewers need to evaluate, is this mentor suitable for this particular mentee? So for example, does this mentee need to build up their publication record? And does the mentor have a lot of success in helping mentees publish research? Okay, just one example. So they need enough information so that they can make that judgment. The mentor is suitable for this mentee and can help this mentee develop professionally in a certain way. The next question is the mentor devoting enough time to the mentee? And Erin, feel free to chime in here. Anything less than 1 hour a week from your primary mentor is, in my experience, has been considered not enough time. Secondary mentors might be once a month for an hour, maybe once every 2 weeks. Erin, do you have any comments on that?
Absolutely. I definitely agree that that seems to be the common theme for folks, is that because a pilot is a short time period and it takes a lot to get it up and running, that usually your primary mentor needs almost an hour a week. Or you can think of that as, 2 hours every 2 weeks, or however you want to think of that. And the other piece that I'll add to that is, whatever is selected, make sure that is clear across all of the documents that are completed. So if the mentor says in their bio sketch they're going to meet 2 hours every 2 weeks, but then the mentoring plan says they're going to meet 1 hour every week, reviewers pick up on that and become concerned because it's not clear and it doesn't match. So as the applicant, you want to be looking through bio sketches, letters of support, mentoring plans to make sure it's all cohesive, whatever is put in those different plans.
And then I'll just finish out this list before we take questions. Also, the reviewer is judging whether the mentor's role in the proposal. So we also talked a little bit about that, like what was their role in pulling this proposal together, and then also in the research project once it's awarded. So how is the mentor going to help make sure that the pilot project is successful? So in those 1 hour meetings per week, what are you going to talk about? Is that person going to help problem solve issues as they arise? Are they going to help ensure that recruitment is on time? You want to give just a little flavor as to what role your mentor is going to play in the project moving forward. And then lastly, they do an overall rating of the mentorship plan. Okay, Erin, any other comments before we answer all the questions?
No, thanks. I think we better go to questions and we'll see what they have. So I think, Diana, you are up first.
I raised my hand because I know I'm going to have questions. Like I do it ahead of time. I'm kidding. So okay, so when you said we could have multiple mentors, but when we put a mentorship plan, so I went back and I looked at my IDP and I'm like, already work on that. So I show that, and then my mentorship plan says I have 3 mentors, for example. And then the 3 of them need to do a mentorship plan, a mentor biosketch, which includes the personal statement and the letter of recommendation?
So the mentorship plan needs to be written by your primary mentor.
Uh-huh.
And then in the mentorship plan, within this additional information section, there should be a description of the rest of your mentoring team there.
Okay. Okay.
Each of your mentors does submit a bio sketch. Erin, is
Okay.
that right?
That's correct. Yep. So each one will submit the bio sketch.
And
again,
each one does a letter.
Yeah. And
Okay.
the letters are where, again, you as the applicant are looking at them to make sure they are clear. Some of the things that the reviewers are looking for is that because if you have 3 mentors, maybe someone is helping with, they've navigated the NIH grant process before.
Mhm.
Make sure that is clear in the letter. If there's someone who's really helping you with the science, maybe that's your primary mentor. Make sure that is clear in their letter. And then maybe there's someone who's location specific, so helping you navigate memoirs. Make sure that's clear. But when you go back to that primary mentor's letter of support, they're really the ones who are tying all the pieces together for the reviewer. So they should be explaining, Melissa showed that section in the mentoring plan. They can also use a letter of support to basically explain how the mentoring team is going to work together to support you.
Okay. Perfect. And can we have memoirs? Memoirs, no. Can we have mentors outside of memoirs?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So with that, Diana, just make sure again that it's clear how you are going to communicate and how you're going to meet, because you know, what role will they play because they are outside of the institution.
Okay.
So just make sure that is clear for the reviewers.
Okay. Thank you.
Who's next?
I think it was Mary.
Hi, yes, it's me. So my question is similar to what Diana was talking about. I have numerous mentors identified within my application, and 2 of them are kind of equally suited and matched. How would you propose going about figuring out who primary mentors should be? Do you have tips or anything like that?
Who has the most time to write the mentoring plan, the letter of support, and have a good bio sketch?
Okay.
I mean, that's something to think about, honestly, because you know, again, these applications are such a quick turnaround that it is a big lift for some of the mentors based on their schedule. So, you know, maybe finding out what their schedule looks like before that's all due. You could also meet together as a team of 3 and let them hash it out over who's going to take the primary role in this. Sometimes that's good that they're talking and understanding that. It also helps when they write their letters because they've had that conversation. So, and really ultimately, Mary, who would be the first person you would go to when an issue happens? You know, you kind of put it in that frame of mind. I know it's sometimes issue specific, but you can probably start with those 3 things, and that might help you select a primary.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Just kind of another note, one thing that we have often seen is that if one of your mentors is like your department chair or your chief, oftentimes there are concerns with the reviewers that that person might not have enough time to be a primary mentor to you. So if that person indeed is your primary mentor, you want to be very clear about how much time they're going to be devoting to your professional development, and what roles that they're going to play. You definitely do not want to have one single mentor who is your division chief or department chair. That is generally kind of not liked by the reviewers. Just another note, so there is a possibility to say you're going to have two co-primary mentors, but if you start to get creative with the names that you give the roles, you would need to make sure again that it's consistently described across all 3 of those sections. You don't want 2 different people to say that they're going to be your primary mentor without some. It just gives a signal that these folks aren't coordinated or understanding their role. All right, who's next, Erin?
Bram, you're up.
Yes. So I have one of my he's not a mentor, but he'll be part of the team as a consultant. Does he need to write like a mentor plan for? I mean, I will include the additional information in the main mentor plan, stating like what he will be doing. But do we need like anything extra from him?
So you can have consultants who are not mentors, and
Okay.
and that's fine. They would just be considered a consultant. Um, I I think it would be good grantsmanship to include a letter from them. I don't know if it's a requirement, but so that they're clearly specifying what their role is in the grant. It's best for kind of anyone involved in the grant to say that, because in a letter specifically, because sometimes consultants don't provide bio sketches. But Erin, you know the details of these applications and the requirements better than I do.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you may not have a bio sketch from a consultant unless they're considered key personnel. So looking at how really they're impacting the project, keep that in mind. But it never hurts to have a letter of support from them, because again, that letter of support will probably also be read by the scientific reviewers to understand how the consultant is strengthening the proposal, right? So it may be important to make sure that's clear. Right now we're talking about how the PDC sees the project, because we're looking at mentoring plans and IDPs, but don't forget, big picture, we're not the overall score. That's really coming from the scientific review. And so that consultant probably has a little bit different role than just being a mentor. If I'm assuming they're probably impacting the science of it too. So you want to make sure that they know and understand how they're playing a role in the project. That makes sense, Ram?
Yes, it does. So just to confirm, like, where would I upload their letter of support? Like, in what section?
So there's, when you go into the portal, and I don't know, you guys can probably tell me, just last I heard the portal wasn't open. It might be open now. You'll see that there's a place to put in letters of support. So for the consultant, if they are not really going in the mentor role, there might be another place that you can put it in there, and I'll take a look after we're done. I can probably screenshot it and tell you. There's also like an other upload section, so you could always make one PDF of all the other documents and put it in there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We had CJ. CJ, we can hardly hear you. You might have to either yell or scream.
Better?
Okay, go ahead. Try now, CJ. I think we might be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was just saying thank you. I love how practical this is. It's been so helpful. I have two questions. Where do we find this mentorship plan? Is it under the IDP as the first thing? Because I went on the portal looking for where to put things and I didn't find it. Am I looking in the wrong place?
So I believe what happens, and Erin, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe what happens is when you put in who your mentor is on the IDP, then an email gets sent to the mentor to complete this.
Oh, okay.
Is that right, Erin?
That's correct. So there's two things you want to do, and all of it involves communicating with your mentor early. So the first thing you want to do is make sure they have a login to the CTR website. It makes things a lot easier for them, and it makes sure that they're getting the correct emails and notifications. When you go into the portal or the interface, the question is gonna say, who is your primary mentor? And you're going to select that primary mentor. Once you do that, the interface will send them the mentoring plan. So ultimately, the mentoring plan is really completed by the mentor. And then the two of you, again, just like the IDP, should sit down and look at it to make sure that you don't have questions, you understand what they're submitting. And, again, that combined effort and the communication should be clear with the mentoring plan. So you will not see the copy coming to you, but it should go to your mentor. So when you hit that button, you may want to send a follow-up email, phone call, text, whatever that looks like for you and your mentor, letting them know they should have something.
Perfect. That's helpful. I thought we were going to fill it together, so I was looking for it. I'm like, where is this? Okay. And then for the letters of support, is that are they writing the letter to me to support me, or to the reviewers to say, who is the letter addressed to?
To the reviewers.
Yes.
Reviewers, okay. Thank you.
Yep. Diana?
Hi. So actually I have a what I did like specifically for this project is I actually included in my project as co-investigators someone that has expertise with ADI, someone that is an oncologist. I have PhD, and then myself. So that kind of I try to cover all of that. But I want them all to be co-investigators and be in the project and get, other, but they are kind of like each one expert in their own. Do they have to do like a letter of support, or like how does that work?
So all of those people, because they're co-investigators, should be submitting bio sketches.
Yes.
So they should be talking in their personal statement about
Okay.
their experiences, their areas of expertise, and their role on this project and how they are going to make a contribution to it. So because they are submitting bio sketches with that statement, they shouldn't need to include a letter of support.
Okay.
Yeah, and Diana, I would just say, make sure you're going through that RFA with a fine-tooth comb, because I think it does ask that if you're labeled them as co-investigators, you have to be careful, because it might mean that they might have to have their own mentoring plan with their mentor, and things like that. So just make sure, and I'll try and find the language and send it to you, but make sure you're looking at it from that angle too.
So and that,
okay.
I think the wording is that implies for multiple principal investigators. So if they're co-investigators, that's different from being a multiple PI.
Yeah, just be careful how, make
so
sure
I think that I am the only PI and that everyone else is a co-investigator.
Yeah, just make sure that is clear, so that
okay,
a reviewer doesn't get something and think differently or otherwise.
Okay, perfect.
And again, there is a bit of redundancy in the mentorship letter, the mentorship plan, and the mentor's letter of support, the mentorship plan, and that first section of the bio sketch. And it's okay. In fact, it's ideal if they are consistent and coherent and they're saying the same thing. That's what you want. You want them to say the same thing. And honestly, I think if you shared these criteria with your mentor, that may be very helpful to them as they're thinking through writing their letter and what they want to put in that that personal statement in their bio sketch. Just to make sure that you are really hitting all of these points that the reviewers are looking to evaluate. Okay, any other questions? Well, if anything does come to mind afterwards, feel free to email me and or Erin. We, as Erin said, we have like a specific role in evaluating these pilot grants. So the Professional Development Corps evaluates the IDP and the mentorship plan, and that is kind of in the RFA. You'll see there's a line about the trainingship plan. The IDP and the mentorship plan fall under your trainee plan, and the scores that we create through this process are kind of then factored in to the overall review. Yeah, you had a question?
Yes, I just wanted to check in. I know that the PD Corps is one of the 3 groups that we can reach out to, but from the email that was sent out, is it that right now there's not enough people within the Corps, or if there's not enough availability for us to meet with you to review our IDP and mentoring plan, or is there? I wasn't. I just wanted to clarify.
So unfortunately, in the past, what we've done is so things that have changed since the last pilot round is one, we lost MUSC as our partner, so we lost a couple reviewers and folks who were able to do the one-on-one session. So previously, we were able to do something like this, but in a one-on-one format. We just don't have that capability because we lost certain people. We have to keep our reviewer pool completely separate from the folks doing the one-on-ones. So that's where the challenge comes in. So they can't, we want to make sure that there's no conflicts, that our reviews are, they're seeing these proposals or hearing about the proposals for the first time. So it just makes it a little bit tricky. And actually, that's not something that's unique to the PDC. That's actually across, I think, all grant mechanisms. It's pretty tricky to find reviewers to do some of these things.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
But if there's something, if you're really not sure, if you're, working on your bio sketch and you're really not sure if your personal statement is hitting the mark, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll do our best to find some folks who can help. I think I have a couple who are willing to do so. So if, if it's something you really want or need or you're nervous about, please feel free to do that. I would just also say with the PDC reviews, a lot of times when they're done their reviews, the feedback that they're providing to the scientific panel, if there's anything that's off or not quite right in what's been submitted in the mentorship plan or the IDP, we're only providing feedback to help strengthen it. So they may say, for example, we would strongly suggest that they find a mentor who is within the institution to help them guide them through the process. So it's not, I know it feels like a lot and it's scary, but we're only coming back with feedback that would help strengthen the proposal. Make sure you guys are successful. So, don't get too stressed over this. Rand?
Hey, just a quick question regarding the mentors and consultants. So one of the comments in the summary statements that I got was they were saying that we should have somebody as a part of like circadian rhythm variable expert. And that's like he was part of the initial submission as well. And now I'm using him as more of a consultant rather than a mentor. And I just want to know, like, how can I highlight that in the plan? Like, because he was already there. I think there was like maybe it was missed when somebody was reading through the grant, but he was already like part of that plan.
So it goes back to that whole idea of making things completely clear to the reviewer. So what you could potentially do is two things. Read this when you're super tired and you don't want to, when you've got 100 things to do, and think about it from the reviewer's perspective and how could they have missed that, right? So maybe it's buried somewhere that at a quick glance for a preliminary application, they're not seeing. So find a way to move it to the forefront. The other thing we always suggest for folks, and if you guys are interested, right now we don't have enough people who said they have been interested. We do peer reviews of specific aims, but it's really helpful to have someone who has no subject matter expertise look at pieces of your grant before they submit it, because they catch things that you intuitively miss because it's your language. So they may catch things like you've used an acronym but haven't explained what it is or something along those lines. So somebody who's not really familiar with your grant may look at that and said, I was really confused about what that guy's role was on the grant. Is he the consultant? Does he have expertise in this field? So that's another suggestion to think about it. But Melissa, if you have anything else too.
Yeah, I know you guys don't have a lot of room to talk about the research itself, but sometimes in the approach section, the very first paragraph, a small section I include is the research team. And I talk about all of the members of the research team and what they're doing and how they're contributing to the proposal. And you can often do that in maybe like 6 lines or something like that. So if it's something that has gone missed before, that's kind of a prime area to put it so that folks can see who your team is.
In the main research plan, like the 4-page. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I mean, another thing you might want to do is when you're talking about when you're doing your budget justification, even if the person's not getting any money, you can talk about their roles there as well. Because there's no limit on the number of pages you have for a budget justification, so you can kind of shoehorn in some details there.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Is there any other questions or concerns?
Great. Well, if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out to me. I'll also volunteer Erin, as she is all knowledgeable about these things as well. And yeah, if you want some feedback or have specific questions on these particular parts of your pilot application, just let us know.
And just a reminder, folks, we have a call every Thursday. The very last part of the call is simply questions and answers. So if you're working on your research strategy or budgets or something, and you have a question, that's a great time to pop on, and hopefully either Rob or I can answer, or we can put you in touch with the person who would be able to help you. So just keep that in mind as a resource as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Guys, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so useful. Thank you.
Diana.
Yes, thank you. And you and I are meeting.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, take care, guys.